Plaza Hotel on a rainy Monday evening in New York City. The National Hockey League held its annual Lester B. Patrick Awards dinner. The Patrick Trophies given for outstanding service to United States hockey. Two-time MVP, now assistant coach as well as player with the Flyers, Bobby Clarke.
The most important decision I ever made in my life was when I chose to play hockey over getting an education. At that time, my father took me aside and he told me, he said, "A man gets nothing for nothing in this world." I decided at that time, if I was going to play hockey, it was going to be more than a game. It was going to be my life. And I've tried to play the game under that philosophy. Playing pro hockey must mean not just making a living off the game, but getting something back. It must be more than just a source of income to all of us. It must be a source of pride. Whatever glory we can take from hockey, we must return to the game with hard work and dedication. We must not cheat the public or the game or ourselves. We must play the game at our highest level at all times.
On Parliament Hill, Prime Minister Trudeau drafted a telegram to Team Canada for a super performance.
Well, like all Canadians, very proud and happy to see this tremendous victory. It's a very exciting series, and I think it's especially remarkable to see how Canadians pulled up from behind and showed this determination and stamina, which we all were sure they had, but which we were all very relieved to show existed.
What effect does a game like this or a series like this have on the Canadian psyche?
No doubt it has very great beneficial effect. I think that most activities in Canada must have stopped in the past couple of hours watching the game. I think even the election campaign, as far as I know, is ground to a standstill, and Canadians will no doubt feel very elated about it. I think it has probably effect also not only in relation to the game, but in relation to Canadians who are over there, the players and the visitors, and this possibility of two countries getting to know each other better in this way. I know personally I've been exchanging some bantering with Premier Kosygin about the outcome of the game, and teasing each other a little bit, and he was proud to send me a telegram saying that even when the Russians were behind, they were still yelling friendship. Well, I think we would still be yelling friendship if we'd lost the game. We might have longer faces, as the Russians have, as they showed up on TV.
This is Game 6 of the Canada-Soviet series from Moscow.
As a youngster growing up on the Canadian prairies, birthplace of Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe, hockey played a formative role in my own personal development. Now, living in Montreal, eternal resting grounds of the Rocket, Maurice Richard, I want to know if the idea of hockey as the Canadian metaphor is worth holding on to in this increasingly diverse, multicultural country. Hockey is the only popular culture we didn't import, and its unifying potential remains strong, though its mythic function has been in steady decline since the 1972 Canada-Soviet Summit Series, still considered the most dramatic hockey ever played. Canada's victory in this famous series, via Paul Henderson's last-minute winning goal, has become the best-known and celebrated Canadian story of all time. But the series was also marked by extreme acts of violence that are only subconsciously remembered. Phil Esposito threatening the Soviets with throat-cutting gestures, Rod Gilbert fighting with Evgeny Mishakov, rare in international competition, Jean-Paul Parise angered at being penalized, nearly decapitating a referee with his stick, Coach Harry Sinden hurling a chair on the ice, team official Ellen Eagleson about to be ejected from the arena after a melee with Soviet militia, flipping Moscow fans the finger at center ice. On orders from assistant coach John Ferguson, Bobby Clarke hunts down Russian star Valery Kharlamov and breaks his ankle with a two-handed slash. What does this image say? At regular speed, it is nearly indiscernible, but stop the flow, split the second, and invisible evidence becomes visible. A two-handed slash, nearly unseen on video but forceful enough to snap the blade of Clarke's stick, breaking Kharlamov's ankle. Would Canada have won if not for the breaking of Valery's ankle? I wonder. In the late 60s, the National Hockey League expanded from 6 teams to 12, becoming an American entertainment enterprise. This corporate takeover was an affront to Canadian nationalism because, quote, hockey is the Canadian metaphor, the rink a symbol of this country's vast stretches of water and wilderness, its extremes of climate, the player a symbol of our struggle to civilize such a land. Some people call it our national religion. Others have called it our national game, our popular theater, our common passion, the game of our lives, the Canadian universal, and the Canadian specific. Apocryphal or not, hockey remains a socializing force. In every town and city across Canada, hockey is more than a hobby or an interest. It's an expectation. Not everyone in Canada likes hockey, and why should they? Corporate monoliths now control the game. Kids no longer learn to skate on frozen ponds, to improvise in an unstructured, casual manner. Drafted at the age of 17, young hockey players are denied their individuality. They become commercial assets with limited education and social skills. I stopped playing hockey when I was 14, tired of the competition, the escalating violence, the culture of disrespect. Now, 14 years later, hockey is back in focus. Working on this film has rekindled my appreciation of the game's essence. But I also see a national sport whose mythology and iconography have been tarnished by continuous acts of gratuitous violence, sexism, homophobia, and racism. This is a game I find hard to resolve. I don't intend to speak about hockey. Rather, I want to ask questions. Questions about nationality in sport, about collective memory, cultural amnesia, and the formation of identity. Through a cinematic arrangement of researches, an archive of materials lost and found. Images of the past revealed in the present. Peeling back the layers, I find and filming hockey means to participate in the creation of a national myth. But how do we avoid myth? How do we create an anti-myth? Beginning in the mid-1950s, Canada's reputation as the world's premier hockey power encountered its first serious challenge. After the Russians' upset victory over Canada's amateur representative, the East York Lyndhursts, at the 1954 World Championships, the nation was scandalized. This loss eventually led to the 1972 Summit Series, marking the first time a team comprised of NHL pros faced off against the amateur Soviets. The 8-game exhibition tournament presented an opportunity for Canada to emphatically regain its prestige and number one status on the world stage. Played under the specter of the Cold War, the international media seized on the contrast of democratic and communist values and styles, pitting Team Canada's flair, individuality, and long hair against the Soviets' disciplined, systematic team play and uniform military grooming. Many North American experts predicted a Canadian sweep.
If a team this great can't beat the Russians 8-0, I'll shred my column in a bowl of borscht and eat it outside the Soviet embassy.
8-0 in the series. That's also the score of the first game. Canada will slaughter the Russians 8 straight.
For Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, sport was an important part of national foreign policy.
There's the official face-off.
And a tool of federalism.
O'Brien, in the old days, he used to present flowers.
Like the United States, Canada previously defined itself against the communism and state power of the Soviet Union, but substituting hockey for the space race as a primary instrument of anti-communist propaganda. This point of view is not innocent. This choice of frame is not neutral. An image can hide as much as it reveals.
It's hockey night in Verdun. The tickets are cheap, $14 each. The hot dogs less than a toonie, and the fans in a frenzy. The big draw, well, there's the hockey, but mostly it's what happens in between.
More violence.
It's called the North American Hockey League, even though all 10 teams are from Quebec. Some say it's the most violent hockey league in the world. The fans call it boxing on ice, and they can't get enough.
Some people say the games don't have the type of grit that they had 10 years ago anymore. Well, they would have to look at this and say, maybe I'm wrong.
What the hell kind of game is this?
How can other forms of on-ice hostility be condemned when bare-knuckle fighting, a criminal activity outside of the hockey arena, is still permitted?
Oh, he's stunned! Wow, did he ever knock him down?
Oh, it's Gill getting hammered. And the young rookie, who's a pretty tough kid.
Fraser's a tough kid. A big kid.
He's a tough kid.
Molik's a tough kid. Kennedy's a tough boy. Thurston, big boy, can handle himself. Cronin's a local kid, boy.
One of the true heavyweights of the National Hockey League here.
These guys are pure heavyweights in this league.
Well, in case you want to see how the undercard's going during the main event, we got the split screen going here.
When does behavior like this cross over from just being tough on the ice to criminal behavior?
I really don't think it ever crosses over to being criminal behavior. The nature of sports is once you step on the field of play, society's laws are basically out the window.
It was a full-on ambush in the third period. A sucker punch to the head from behind. The Canucks 6'3", 245-pound Todd Bertuzzi jumped rookie Avalanche forward Steve Moore, forcing him face first into the ice. Moore is in a Vancouver hospital with a broken neck, cuts on his face, and a concussion, and will miss the rest of the season.
Bobby Clarke's slashing of Kharlamov's ankle is a minor incident brought to light in Todd Bertuzzi's recent attack on Steve Moore. Fusing past and present, the Bertuzzi incident has released a historical constellation of Canadian violence and aggression into the televisual sphere. The resultant montage of blindside slashes and cross-checks, crashes, concussions, and fractured skulls reveals that Canadian players have instigated nearly all of hockey's most vicious attacks.
And the score settling has gone too far.
The conclusion I draw from this evidence, conveniently replayed by the same television media that also produces it, is that corporate and public pressures to win at all costs not only shape but also encourage hockey violence.
Jackson, we got some really good Donnerbooks here. They both.
That's it.
Out.
He's out. Well, I haven't seen one of those since.
Look at this collision. Oh, I mean, that's a train wreck. And then poor Sammy, I mean, he's doing this at one end of the ice, and the puck is now all the way down at the other end. Look at him. The play is still on here, folks. Look at him. He's going to the voices. Look at the Primo helping him over here. Oh my goodness, I haven't seen anything.
Some argue that fighting keeps the game cleaner because a player guilty of questionable conduct would then be physically accountable for it on the ice. Advocates of fighting also state that the NHL's politically correct attempt to ban fighting is actually making the game more violent because the players, mainly the so-called enforcers, cannot informally police the game on the ice.
Here he comes. They're all at it. Look out. Cheville Day's in it. There's two guys are on covert.
And we have a war at the end of the game, and Chevrier is just getting murdered.
Opponents of fighting retort that international and college hockey, which both harshly penalize fighting with suspensions, lack the incidents of violence that proponents of fighting claim to fear. They question why ice hockey is the only professional team sport that requires a tolerance for violence. I find it telling that the NHL is the only professional league that has a major award for sportsmanship, the Lady Byng Trophy. Throughout the 1970s, Bobby Clarke's team, the Philadelphia Flyers, are known as the Broad Street Bullies, famous for terrorizing their opponents. Beginning in 1972, various proposals to the US Congress are made calling for a federal sports violence act, but it's never established. After a hockey brawl in Toronto, Ontario Provincial Attorney Roy McMurtry states he'll prosecute hockey's brutes as he would any street criminal. NHL President Clarence Campbell issues a familiar response, blaming increased television exposure and expansion for creating a perception that violence is on the rise.
Двенадцатый номер. И Bobby Clarke.
Le numéro 17, number 17, Valery Kharlamov.
For the people across Canada, we tried. We did our best, and for the people that boo us, geez, all of us guys are really disheartened, and we're disillusioned, and we're disappointed in some of the people. We cannot believe the bad press we've got, the booing we've gotten in our own buildings, and if the Russians boo their players, if the Russians boo their players like some of the Canadian fans, I'm not saying all of them, some of them booed us, then I'll come back and I'll apologize to each one of the Canadians, but I don't think they will. I'm really disappointed. I am completely disappointed. I cannot believe it. Every one of us guys, 35 guys that came out and played for Team Canada, we did it because we love our country and not for any other reason, no other reason. They can throw the money for the pension fund out the window. They can throw anything they want out the window. We came because we love Canada. John?
Keep working hard.
We're going to get better.
Attaboy. Thank you very much, Bill.
Hello, Canada. I'm Foster Hewitt. I'll be doing the play-by-play of tonight's key game. With the Soviets moving into a commanding lead in this series, having won 3, tied 1, and lost 1, this 6th game is a must for Canada if they're to win or tie the 8-game series. It's do or die tonight.
Well, Foster, if Team Canada is to win tonight or at all in Moscow, they must, through puck control, slow down the tempo of the play.
10:22 left in the second period, 3-1. And there's the penalty box. Canadian bench, rather. Harry Sinden standing back of it. The referee is speaking to the two players facing off, and the puck is knocked down. 3-1 for Canada as the puck goes back to Ragulin, number 5. They're 5 aside. Both teams a man short. Soviets move to the attack at center ice. Kharlamov passes back. Here's a roller in front, a shot. Knocked down by Bergman, who fell in front of it. And there's going to be a penalty, I believe, on this one. Here's a mix-up as the Soviet player shoved a bit. Now Bergman goes over to the Soviet player, threatens him a bit. That's Kharlamov and Bergman. Well, that nearly started something. And as they don't understand English, it doesn't really mean whatever they're saying.
The attack proves to be the turning point in the emotionally charged matchup. At the time, Canada was trailing the series 3-1 and needed to win the final 3 games to claim victory. Kharlamov, the Soviets' most skillful player, was never the same after the slash, and the Canadians rally for a series victory.
Kharlamov comes over to the Soviet bench.
The Summit series occurred when video was becoming an international broadcast medium. The poor quality of the cameras and television facilities used in Moscow caused several moments of picture loss. Besides representing obvious economic and technological disparities between the countries, I like to think these technical glitches signify the forgotten juvenile misbehavior that occurred throughout the series. It's my assertion that Team Canada's performance, and Clarke's slash in particular, signify a discernible glitch in the production and representation of Canadian nationalism, identity, and masculinity. This fissure disrupts Canadian self-identification as polite, peaceful, and sportsmanlike, and enacts a shadow identity as frustrated, aggressive, and vengeful. In a Stanley Cup game between the Boston Bruins and Ottawa Senators, several players complain about the officiating. The Bruins' Billy Cotu attacks referee Jerry Laflamme. NHL President Frank Calder expels Cotu from the NHL for life. 1933, Toronto's King Clancy stands up Boston Bruins defenseman Eddie Shore at the blue line as he rushes up the ice with the puck. An irate Shore exacts revenge by slamming into Leaf winger Ace Bailey with a vicious hit from behind.
Ace Bailey has fallen to the ice, and he's lying on the ice now, really injured apparently from the attack.
Bailey suffers a fractured skull. Shore is suspended 16 games. 1955, Maurice Richard receives a match penalty for deliberately injuring the Bruins' Hal Laycoe, chopping him over the head with his stick and punching linesman Cliff Thompson. Richard is suspended for the rest of the season in the playoffs, causing an uproar amongst fans. The following game, NHL President Clarence Campbell is pelted with eggs while attending a game at the Montreal Forum. The game is forfeited and the arena evacuated due to an out-of-control crowd that takes to the streets.
On the side, the rioting raged on for hours.
1969, the St. Louis Blues' Wayne Mackey knocks the Boston Bruins' Ted Green down from behind. The latter retaliates by slashing Mackey, who hits the ice. Mackey in turn spears Green, who again sends Mackey flying. The pair exchange vicious slashes until Mackey clubs Green over the head, fracturing his skull. Green needs 3 major operations to save his life and has a steel plate inserted in his head. Mackey is suspended for 30 days and Green for 13 games when he returns to action 1 year later. Assault charges are filed against both players, who are later acquitted. 1987, Canada is in contention for the gold medal and leading Russia in the final game of the World Junior Hockey Tournament until a bench-clearing brawl erupts. The officials fail to control the melee, and they shut off the lights as a last resort. The players continue to fight in the dark, and the game is cancelled. Both teams are disqualified. These actions are not isolated. They are not coincidental. How do we understand hockey violence? Who is Valery Kharlamov? What is the function of Bobby Clarke? What is a national identity? How is it produced? Would Canada have won if not for the breaking of Valery's ankle? If Canada hadn't won, would Trudeau have been re-elected? If Trudeau hadn't been re-elected, would Canada be the multicultural country it is today?
Crowd on hand tonight for this key game. Alan Eagleson on his right.
How would we remember the Summit series if Canada hadn't scored in the final minute of the final game? Would we have forgotten it entirely? Would we make movies about it 30 years later? Would we remember it at all? In this age of global warming, mass media, and ultra-competitive minor sports, have we lost our tie to hockey's vernacular roots? To the snow and ice and unstructured game of our youth, of the outdoors? Is it time to finally admit that hockey, the game we invented and lost touch with, now belongs to the world, and that our claims to ownership are no longer valid?
And Chico Resch of the Flyers, and then they started. Oshbard threw the gloves and started pounding on Claude Lemieux. They've accused the so-called Broad Street bullies for doing a lot of things and ruining the sport, but this is something we never did.
Even in its early days, hockey had a reputation for brutality, the speed of the game, the allowance of body contact, and the danger of the hockey stick itself, all contributed to an atmosphere of violent aggression. From Shore's vicious, carousing hit on Ace Bailey to Clarke's preemptive smashing of Kharlamov's ankle, flashing up once again in the image of Bertuzzi's assault on Steve Moore, we see a continuum of repressed frustration and vengefulness. The recurrent enactment of this frustration cuts to the heart of the Canadian psyche, a psyche determined by what we are not rather than what we are. Until we recognize the dark history of our hockey past and correct the hypocritical construction of our national identity, the cycle of violence will continue unabated.
It's just so heartbreaking, John, because our players are up for the game in spite of the tragic loss the other night. They're playing like the champions they are. They're doing their best for their country. And in spite of that, we're getting the short end of the stick. It's just incredibly bad. I can't believe it.